had a couple cancellations ahead of time, so I that December, November was a little
I
crazy.
understand.
So I'm really excited to have you here. It's a long time coming.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally understand. It gets a bit hectic. We had our event in December as well. So between holidays, events, and everything else that life throws at us, it takes a bit to get us on get busy people on a call, right?
Tell me, yeah, no kidding. What's your tell me about your event? What was that?
So we do these events roughly once a quarter, building wealth with businesses. And we have an event where it's 3 days long, get a chance to learn how to scale up companies using marketing systems, automation, prepare them for an exit, increase their value. And then we bridge that with like a Shark Tank style event, which is, companies come and they pitch, they get a chance to talk to investors and potentially raise capital, and then investors get a chance to look at the deals and potentially invest in them. So yeah, it's a good time. We had about 60 or so people that were there, and it's a really, really cool technology that we got a chance to look at too.
Oh, that's fun. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we've kind of started the broadcast on the fly, and no official intro video, but this is Conversations with Joshua T Berglan, and I'm really excited to talk to Jeff today, Mr. Jeff Barnes. As we were saying before we hit go or hit play, hit record, whatever it may be, we've been trying to do this interview, and just life happens sometimes, but Jeff's an extremely accomplished guy and has done so many neat things. And the world that we're going into, and I mean, I think that world's here, and I've been talking about it for years, but it's really, really in our face now. And Jeff's expertise, I think, is going to be something that can offer a lot of value for everyone. And I love the fact that he's doing these Shark Tank style of events too. I think they're really neat, but it sounds like to me, and I'm excited to learn with all the rest of you, it sounds like he's getting people prepared for the fourth industrial revolution with his own his own expertise and specialty. So today's going to be a lot of fun. Jeff, thank you so much for being here. I didn't mean to do this sneak attack start on you. Actually, I did mean to, because I like doing it. I wish that I could have just had record going, because the conversations that happen before the interview starts, sometimes they're more interesting and they're a little bit more authentic. And it's like, but for some reason, when you hit record, people change and they put a game face on. And I don't like that. I've seen it happen.
I wouldn't worry about that too much with me.
Trick people out of it. So thank you for being here, man.
Yeah, of course. No, I appreciate it. I wouldn't really worry too much about me being too formal. I was a Submariner for a while, so I'll be as authentic as you need me to be.
No, and I got that. I got to see some of your videos this morning, and I like the fact that this is just, you just present yourself the way that you are, and I dig that. But I'm looking at your beautiful background, and so I want to do something here. Tell me about All Hands on Deck.
So that was a book I wrote a few years back about how U.S. Navy's structure, systemize, and optimize for success. And it was meant to be sort of a way for me. It was a lead magnet for me to help companies when I was consulting with them to understand how military discipline, specifically submariners, can really help companies grow. Because when I got out of the Navy, I was appalled with how terribly most businesses were run. And my job was to actually go and inspect these businesses for insurance purposes. And I was just blown away. And so when I was trying to branch out on my own, I was in this mastermind group, part of Dan Kennedy's mastermind group. And I was like, guys, I have no idea how to position myself and what I can do and how I do this. And so they put me up on stage and they asked me a few questions. And the very first thing they asked is, okay, so tell us a little bit about your career. Like, how'd you get here? And I got about 30 seconds into it saying, well, I started by operating a nuclear power plant on a submarine. And they said, well, okay, that's your angle right there. Like, very few people have that kind of expertise, and we don't even know what you did there and can leverage that into business. And they said, you got to write a book about that, tell us your stories and all the fun stuff, and see if you can leverage that into business.
That's about as cut and dry and simple as it gets. Like the cover a lot. So now right next to you on the other side is that say self-directed?
Yeah. The ultimate guide to self-directed investing and retirement planning. And that was my first foray into raising capital. When I was getting my MBA, I partnered up with this gentleman and we were doing real estate developments. And the thing that I like doing is the operations and the processes and things like that, but I also understand the marketing operations piece of it. And the problem we were constantly struggling with was that people that we were talking to had all their money in IRAs and 401ks. And this is about 2010, 11. Financial crisis was happening. They lost a whole bunch of money. You know, there's trillions of dollars that just evaporated overnight practically. And these people are worried, but they're like, yeah, all my money's in a 401k, all my money's in IRA. I can't do anything with you guys. It's like, no, actually you can. And what it would end up happening is they then go and research and learn on their own, or they go to another company and they never come back to us. I said, nah, forget that. We can't have that anymore. Let us become the company and let us be the educators in that. So we started doing that. And that's how Self-Directed was born. And that's how now we start getting clients in for investing using their IRAs and 401ks.
In your expertise and you're working with your clients and helping getting people prepared, how much different is your strategy now with so much uncertainty about our current financial system and really where we're going as a world? What's changed?
You know, I think if anything, I've become even more of an advocate for getting your money out of the markets. And number one reason for that is you have zero control over what happens, right?
Mm.
You know, people love to talk about how great the stock market's performed in the past few years. And then, of course, there were dips, and then we saw it rise during COVID and all this. And they completely forget the fact that that happened because we pumped trillions of dollars into the economy. And where's that money eventually going to go? It's going to go to the companies that are listed, and the value is going to go up. But at the same time, inflation has completely overtaken any gains they might have seen. So what you could have retired on, you know, say $1 million in your nest egg a few years back isn't worth anywhere near that anymore, right? And so my focus is always cash now, cash flow, and cash later, right? So cash now is you have an opportunity to maybe pull money off the table from your business. You take money out of your home, you know, home equity if you have any of that. And then cash flow is invest in things that are going to give you money in your bank every single month. And then cash later is how are you building equity? How are you building that equity in your business, predominantly in businesses, so that you could exit, or it could be real estate. You could exit sometime in the future and take a lot of money if you need it.
Do you, when you're coming up with strategies, do you pay attention to the United Nations and World Economic Forum plans, or does that ever register at all?
I mean, how political do we want to get on this one?
I talk.
Yeah.
Listen, I guess I should say this. I don't align politically. I'm not like I'm an equal opportunity offender, except I never really seek
Beautiful.
to offend. I seek to understand, and at the same time, I believe in everyone having the opportunity to share what's true to them. I on the other hand, don't subscribe to knowing any truth, and I like that. I used to think I knew everything, and I was one of those truthers that I was going to wake people up, and then that was a bunch of bullshit. So I don't really get into that game anymore, but I do like having these conversations, but having them from a place of you can't offend me because I don't really subscribe to any of it, but I am interested in it, and I listen to it and make up my own mind, but it doesn't mean that my mind's right. If that makes
Right.
sense.
Well, and that's the hard part, right? We are struggling in this day and age, like we call this the attention economy, right?
Yeah.
We've kind of blown past the information age. We're in the attention age, right? Whoever can capture the most attention for the longest is going to give you whatever information they want, and
Yeah.
most people will just believe it. So I agree with you. You gotta like, I tell my kids are 10 and 11 years old right now, two boys, and plain and simply, I was like, you know what? I don't care how much you learn at school. That's great if you can learn. School is there to teach you how to learn. But if you cannot learn how to think for yourself, then you're screwed, right? Like you're just going to follow along with whatever the masses tell you to do, and good luck, right? So going back to your question, what the World Economic Forum. Listen, right now Davos is going on, and they're flying in all their private jets over there, and they're talking about how the rest of these humans should live beneath their means and should just hand over all their controls to the government, whatever it be. And the Great Reset, the 2030 plan was, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And if anybody hasn't watched that, you have to go watch that, in my opinion, and then make up your mind for yourself, right? But me personally, you could probably figure it out just from my background here. I am a staunch advocate of personal autonomy and freedom. And I don't think that you can have personal sovereignty without having some sort of financial freedom, right? That's one of Maslow's hierarchies right there, is you've got to have the bases covered. And so how do you cover those bases if you give up control and you cede your ability to earn to any power, right? Whether that's a corporation or the government, doesn't really matter. So from my perspective, I love following guys like Robert Kiyosaki, and I've had a chance to sit down and meet with him and chat with him and
Cool.
things like that. And then I've got a chance to talk with some really, really smart people. Steve Forbes, Forbes Media, John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods. And all of these people have very, very similar views, and I like their views, which is that you essentially have to always look out for your own personal assets, your ability to earn, but your ability to invest and grow that investment is vital. And all of these people, anybody who has had any modicum of success over their lifetime, will have a similar approach, which is, we're not just going to sit back and wait for things to happen and hope that it all works out. We're going to take control. And sometimes taking control means going against the grain and doing something that no one else wants to do.
I like that a lot. I do. So it's interesting. I love that you brought that up, and I'm glad that you brought up Agenda 2030 also. And it's interesting because the catchphrase, you will own nothing and be happy. I can see why people would go for that, because it's exhausting to be an entrepreneur. It's exhausting to go for your dreams. It's exhausting to pursue something greater than yourself. It's exhausting to take the hero's journey. It's exhausting to say, okay, God, I'll do what you created me for. It's the most exhausting thing ever. It's most stressful, most frustrating, most frightening, most scary. It's all of those things.
Yep.
So I can totally see why. No pressure. I can just sit here and do nothing.
Yeah.
And so I get that, except for the fact that, thank God, for whatever reason, my entire life, anytime someone told me anything, I'm like, I don't believe you. So I don't take things at surface level. But that said, I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't disagree. I'm sorry. I'm not going to say that I disagree with everything the World Economic Forum's talking about. I listened to Yuval Noah, I forgot his last name, but he's kind of like the mouthpiece for the World Economic Forum. And people lose their minds because they watch his clips and they hear what he's saying. I don't understand why anyone would get mad at someone for telling the truth about what's about to happen. Like, why would we shoot the messenger? And what they're telling us is, and look, there's another side to it, I know, but they are telling us, if you want success and if you want freedom in this new world, this is what you need to do. They are saying that. And I believe for all of these crazy evil dictators that are around the world, these lizard people or whatever I like to imagine them being that day, whatever conspiracy I want to kind of agree with for the moment, Wolfman, whatever. Anyway, inverts. But I appreciate the fact that they're at least saying, this is what's going to happen, so you can prepare accordingly. You can either go back to the Stone Age or you can progress. And the other part of it that I like that Noah is doing is he's saying that this is what's coming. So if you don't like it, you need to prepare and come up with something different. So what I want to ask you, because you have a level, I don't know what your intelligence level is, and I've heard that military members don't like hearing thank you for your service, but I'm going to thank you anyway, because you signed up for a job that most people wouldn't do. And I honor you for that. My brother's done it. I've seen the toll that being in the Navy, especially the job when he was in Virginia, he did something, or Washington, he worked on nuclear subs. Anyway, but now I forgot his position, but he's high rank. But I've seen the toll that it's taken on his family. So I have a lot of respect for you. And
I appreciate
I want to honor you for that. But I want to ask you, you probably have some level of clearance, or you have a different understanding of how the world works than a civilian would, because you've seen things, you've had exercises, you've done trainings, you've prepared, and you've been given information that other people wouldn't get on Twitter and Facebook. So with that said, with all these future plans that the World Economic Forum and the United Nations has, which some of it is it could be in theory a great world, and some of it could be very scary. What are some healthy alternatives to what's being proposed that doesn't make us go back to the Stone Age? It allows us to still move forward with technology, but it also doesn't enslave us. Have you got any ideas?
Well, let me answer that with, kind of an analogy here, right? If you were to go back, say, 40 years, right? Go back to the 80s, and I'm born and growing up, and we didn't have cell phones. And if you had a pager, oh my gosh, you either were a drug dealer or really, really important, right?
Real
And we were we weren't connected to everybody all the time, and kids were allowed to roam free out, and as long as the street lights came on, you came home, everybody was happy, right? And then contrast that with today, where technology has completely inundated every aspect of our lives, right? Like, parents know where their kids are 24/7. Heck, they even have communication with them and can track them and all of that sort of stuff. And, if you went back to the 80s and you told, hey, guess what? Every single parent, all of a sudden your kids are going to have trackers on their wrist, trackers in their pockets all the time, and you're going to see them. We would think 1984, right? We would think
Sure.
Brave New World, Aldous Huxley. And there is an era of that, right? That is, to a certain extent, very true, right? And we have to really acknowledge that. But a lot of it has been good, because you like to be able to get connected. If something happens, if there's an emergency situation, it's nice to be able to contact those people. On the other hand, it can be taken too far, right? It can be taken to control your children. It can be taken to control every aspect of their lives. And governments and corporations are doing this to their employees. They know what emails you're sending, and they have access to, operate your cameras in some case. Like, the whole Snowden thing and the whistleblower stuff a long time ago. It's like, it's kind of scary how they can take technology way too far. So the way I look at technology is, you have to understand it, and to a certain extent, you have to embrace it. But on the other hand, you also have to know what the negative consequences are of not doing that, or not using the technology, or it being used too far, right? So AI is very, very hot right now. We use AI in our businesses. We have AI companies that are coming up and looking for capital. And these companies are all saying publicly, hey, listen, AI is not going to turn into Skynet and, let off all the nukes in the world and take the world out and all of that, right? We're not seeing that. On the other hand, they're also saying the capability is there for that to happen in the future if it starts getting tied into all these different things. And so AI can be very scary, but does that mean we bury our head in the sand and ignore it altogether? No, it means we learn how to use it. And especially business owners, entrepreneurs, heck, even executives at companies need to understand it, even if you're not the ones pressing the buttons, right? You need to understand what it's capable of doing, so that you can either leverage it for good or see it when it's being used for bad.
That's a really good answer. I like that. The with every progression.
That all being said, really quickly, just that all
Yeah.
being said, I'm still going to eat meat. I'm not going to be eating bugs, and I'm going to make sure that I have access to red meat regularly, because that's a big thing for me, which is one of those things that people take a lot too far, right? Like, oh, you're never going to eat red meat again, and you're never going to have access to this stuff. We're going to eat, protein from everything else. So I think that, to the thing you were saying earlier, the conspiracy theory side of me sees how all that stuff could become a reality, the stuff they're talking about.
Yeah.
And it is possible, right? But on the other hand, the pragmatic side of me says, yeah, there's too many people in the world to just go ahead and change all of our ways and modes of doing things overnight.
Yeah, I agree. And it's never as bad as they say it's going to be, and it's never as good as they say it is either. I mean, it's
right.
And maybe that's my own mind that likes to take, actually, I know that to be true. My mind likes to take things to extremes, and I like to find every possible angle and perspective possible, because I'm amazed in what I've allowed myself to believe to be true.
Right.
And like looking back at it, even over the last few years, and then some of the things were true, but a lot weren't. and but the things that I did believe to be true that I later found out were embarrassing enough that I don't really need credit for the things that I got right. And I'm not concerned about being right. What I'm
But that's a
concerned,
really that's a really mature stance to take, right? And I think most people are not there. If to find out that you are wrong, like who here, watch this, has kids, and your kid says something and you're like, that is so blatantly untrue, incorrect, false, whatever. And you try and explain to your kid that it's wrong. And they're like, no, 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 no. Somebody told me this on the playground. And so absolutely it's true because he's the cool kid. And I'm going to believe that. Right. And it's such an immature stance to take that you can't change your mind. And most people, unfortunately, still have that ingrained in them. They will not change their mind, even in after being shown the
yeah,
truths. Right. And I think that's the biggest challenge a lot of us face, is that going back to the mass media and the control, and we're in the attention economy. If you hear something said over and over and over and over again, eventually you're just going to believe it's true. And it's going to be ingrained so deeply in you that you're not going to be able to shift. And that's what George Orwell was writing about, right? He's like,
mhm,
the media and the government controlled everything, and we can see that playing out. And when they do, if they change their mind and they're like, hey, we need to put a new narrative out there, they did. And I can never remember the main character's name. It's always on the tip of my tongue, but I can never remember it. But his whole issue was, wait, no, yesterday we were saying these were the bad guys and these were the good guys. Now we're switched. Like, and everybody just agrees with that. Like, doesn't make sense. And so most people don't ever acknowledge the fact that they were wrong, could have been wrong, or there's even a potential for another answer or paradigm, right? And I think that's where we run into a lot of problems, is people are not willing to even reflect on their own beliefs.
well, I don't like, battling mental illness most of my life the way that I did. And a lot of it was some of my mental illness was the self-inflicted damage was worse and making it worse. But with all of that, and over the years and this, even my healing journey to get well, like I've been pretty isolated. Like I don't have any friends. I have my partner, Jessica, and the kids, and like I have friends from social media that I talk to, but as far as relationally in my life, I don't have anyone. But the few people that I had all went away during COVID
Mm-hmm.
because I stood my ground for what I believed was right, what I believed to be true, which I come to find out I was right about what I believed, which was one of the few things that I was right about.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
right about a lot, but I was right about one of the warnings that I gave, and the only reason why I was able to give that warning is because I already had the condition myself. And people can read between the lines. Everyone's going to find out. I don't want to
Right.
get broadcast yanked off. But anyway, the point is that I alienated myself, and at what price of telling the truth, which I think we should always be honest. But was it worth losing people I love over? I don't know. I don't.
Well,
Being
and I
right
think that's
is still
something that
wrong.
here's the way I look at that, right? Is it really about being right, or is it about upholding your principles and your morals, right?
It's good.
To
Good.
me, that's where I found the issue, right? 'Cause same thing, right? Alienated people, friends I've known for a lifetime, family. And it wasn't even about, I need to be right. It was about, these are my principles, guys. These are my truths. And my truth is, your government, your friend, you're not going to peer pressure me into doing something that I don't want to do. And you are allowed to have your viewpoint, okay? But you are not allowed to come into my house to tell my kids how to do things, to tell me how to do things, and then to shame us because we don't agree with you, right?
Amen.
That's where it was for me. It was more of a principle thing, because I can forgive people for being wrong. Like, people are idiots all the time. Like, let's just be honest. Like, the vast majority of the population, like, I can't believe, like, the comedian Bill Engvall, right? Here's your sign. It used to be funny. I wish I could go around with those signs like I'm stupid and just give them out to people all the time. But the fact is that, now we get offended by all of that. But we know, all of us, and we do things that are dumb, and we look at it like 10 seconds later, like, I can't believe I did that. That was so stupid, right? But,
Yeah.
but most people live in that stupid state, unfortunately. Um, and so you can always forgive people for being dumb or being wrong, but I have a hard time forgiving people for trying to make me do something that is completely out of principle for me. And
Fair enough.
that's where I struggle.
No, that's fair, and I appreciate that perspective, and maybe I'll quit feeling so guilty for ruining so many. I mean, I hurt some people's feelings
Sure.
too, because I was like, "Go get your CD4 and CD8 accounts. I'll bet you $100. Go get them checked right now." I mean, just like aggressive and just
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to ask you something. And I mean no disrespect of this question at all.
Sure.
This is not.
It'd be really hard to offend me, my friend.
Okay. Is it possible, and I know that we have these wars going on, or a war and rumors of war and all that other stuff. Is it possible that there's no real good guys in this war?
Oh man, that's a great question. So here's the way I look at this. I mean, you can go back and look at war after war. I mean, time immemorial, right? And realize that there are certain people pulling the strings that the vast majority of people have no clue about. So what I'm going to say is there are good guys on all sides and there's bad guys at the very top on all sides, right? The good guys, in my opinion, are the people who are doing what they enlisted, signed up to do, and be a part of it, right? The boots on the ground, the folks that are being like, these are my orders and I'm being told. And they're being fed information from on high that they have to believe is true because they're going there to defend, like, that's part of our oath, to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States of America. And no one would volunteer in our country anyway, and I think most countries, no one would volunteer to protect and defend the Constitution if they didn't actually believe that the organization they were volunteering for didn't do that, right?
Right.
They just simply wouldn't. So you have to always look at the soldiers, the Marines, the sailors, the Coast Guard, the Space Force even, right? and say, these people enlisted because they believed in an ideal. And we have to always realize that. The same thing is true, I'm sure, of the Russian military. I'm sure it's the same thing as the Ukrainian military, the Chinese, all over the world. These people join the ranks because they truly are patriots in their own right. However, if you go all the way to the very, very top and you look at this, you're like, people start researching things like Cecil B. Rhodes and the Order and things like this, and start diving really deep. You can see that bankers, like the really biggest organizations in the world, are making money hand over fist on both sides of the equation. And if you were really a patriotic person, would you actually want to make money by hurting your side? No, right? And so if the deeper and deeper you dive into this, the more it's going to just make you scratch your head, pull your hair out, get frustrated, get mad. And then we have to also sit back and realize this has been happening for, decades, if not centuries, right? So that's the way I kind of look at it.
It's very, we would word it differently, or but we're very much the same in that belief. I believe that, well, what you said, you were accurate, but I think there's two new world orders at war, and which is pretty obvious at this point. But I actually think that both of those world orders serve the same master. Like they're controlled. And so I've seen a lot of documentaries about it being the bankers' wars. It probably goes even deeper than even that. But at the same time, that's pretty close. And it just makes me think, like, if this is a real war, if I was in war and I was losing my countrymen and countrywomen, and I don't know what trans people call themselves in the military, trans people, transformer, I don't know, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I mean, it does matter, I guess. But I have a heart. It's for me. I would think that if I'm engaged in war, I know if I get in a fight, I don't think about kindness. I think about how quickly I can eliminate you. And
Right.
so all this going back and forth, and Russia's losing 100,000 people a day, and we got nukes, and we're preparing for nukes, and we're preparing. Like I'm going, why would you tell the enemy that? I would just go drop the biggest bomb possible and destroy everyone possible. If I have all of these capabilities, if I can tell what brand of cigarette you're smoking from the sky, then I should be able to kill you when I want to. So I see all this other stuff in this theater. It's like, I'm not even going to pay attention to it because this just seems like we're being effed with. Is that
100%.
how accurate is that?
I mean, you're 100% spot on, right? So let me give you a story here. When my grandfather, I had three grandfathers, due to divorce and remarry. All three had gone into World War II. One of them was actually a Holocaust survivor, watched his family murdered and escaped the Nazi internment camp, and then went back and fought them. And my dad's dad was in the Army in the South Pacific during World War II, and decorated, enlisted guy, and did all sorts of crazy things, some probably atrocious things, and things he never talked about. When Vietnam was happening, my dad turns 18 in 1972, and he goes, I want to do what I think I should do and enlist, and I want to sign up for the draft and all of that. And my grandfather looks at me and goes, no. He goes, what do you mean no? He goes, it doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense about this thing. Here we are, the biggest military might in the world right now, with everything going on, and we can't defeat these guys on the ground in their own turf. Because why? He goes, if we really wanted to defeat them, do exactly what you just said. If we really wanted to take them out, you drop the bombs, you'd be done with it, right? Because there's something else at play. And FDR talked about, not FDR, Dwight Eisenhower talked about the military industrial complex, right? If you look at that, it's like, okay, this makes sense. They're selling weapons to all sides. Let's perpetuate it. If you look at what's happened during recessionary times and depressionary times, how did we get out of them? Well, there was wars that happened, and some would say, hey, you know what? These wars were probably instigated, not necessarily because a country was really poor and they couldn't figure out a way out, but a way to stimulate the economy in certain regards. So there's a lot of really scary things when you start diving deep into that. And the fact remains that, if we wanted to, if the United States wanted to take out a country, we have like an aircraft carrier, if I recall, and I might be wrong with this now, so hopefully nobody, vilifies me for this, but a single aircraft carrier, one, fully loaded with all the ships and all the armament, everything that it needed, was something like the 8th or 5th largest military in the world, right?
Whoa.
One aircraft carrier. You put together one group, and we're talking like the 3rd largest, right? Behind Russia and Japan, or in China, I mean.
Wow.
Right? We're talking like one group, right? Now, the US has so many more, capabilities, not to mention that, but now cyber is a big issue, right? Cyber threats and cybersecurity. So when you look at all these wars and everything that's going on, you're 100% right. There is definitely something deeper at play here. I can't pretend to know all of what I think it is. You can look at the political battles that are happening here in the United States. There's definitely something deeper at play here than just, hey, people don't like Donald Trump and he's a criminal. There's so much more going on beneath the surface, right? I mean, in DC, I don't think there is such a thing. But there's so much more going on beneath the surface of all of these things. But most people only want to go surface deep because it is exhausting. Like you were saying earlier, it is exhausting to keep up with it and to try and make heads or tails of it.
It is exhausting. Like, that's another thing too. Like, seeking truth, like, that is exhausting. I just don't want to know. I have found it to be way more enjoyable not knowing anything and just collecting.
So that leads, I mean, if anybody hasn't read Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, which was written in 1931, I think.
I know about that book.
Just an incredible book. And the whole point is that specific thing right there. Most people don't want to know the inner workings. Most people don't want to have to deal with all this stuff. I had a friend a long time ago, and she asked me, well, why are you an entrepreneur? Like, why are you a business owner? Like, that sounds like the most stressful thing in the world. I was like, well, because that's how I can make my dreams come true. She goes, oh, I don't want to have any part of that. I want to go to work. And when I'm done at work, I want to go home and check out and not even think about it again. And that's the way most people are. They just don't want to think about it. They just want to live their lives and enjoy it. And that's all well and good. But the problem with that is that means other people are doing the thinking for you. And at some point down the road, the two roads diverge in the woods. If all of a sudden the people that you are electing and putting in charge are going down the road that you don't really want, yeah, it's not that far apart from the original path initially, but give it a few years or a few decades, and all of a sudden you have a country or a lifestyle that you can't even recognize and you can't come to grips with, right? And so that's the challenge I think we face.
Is it possible? I guess it probably is, but so you have these people that are kind of pro World Economic Forum, or maybe they're not pro anything, they're just lukewarm, like the people you were talking about, like the secretary. She goes to her job, goes home, puts on the news, zones out, has some glasses of wine, maybe takes a bong hit, no judgment. And I'm gonna go to sleep, and then I'm gonna get up in the morning kind of tired. I'm gonna drink my coffee, go to the gym, maybe go to work, do nothing, and then just repeat that cycle over and over and over and over again, which is just like a numb way of living. And I'm not making fun of people who do that. I'm not. I mean, because trust me, that's a lot less stressful life than what I live. But
yeah, I mean, some of us go on vacation so we can do that, right?
Yeah. I mean, and some of us just believe that there's something more for us, and we want that freedom. Yep. We want the independence. We want to basically live with that risk of, I'm going to go for my dreams, and there may be days that I have no money to eat, but damn it, there's going to be days when I get to feast, and I'm all about the feast. And like that. So is it possible? Because with the crypto space, and I'm finally learning about crypto, like I've been involved in metaverse and some other things, but not in a way of like, I understand it and where I can do a presentation. I'm just a part of a group that is going to be the first community launch there. And I'm excited about it. So, but as I'm learning more about crypto and how it works and all of these, I'm going to forget the terminology, but learning how there's like, I want to say off-grid. That's not the right word. There's another word for it, but it's where you have these independent communities that are self-sustaining. Yes, thank you very much. And it's its own world. Like they're going, I've had enough of this world. I'm checking out. I'm no longer a citizen of this other nonsense that I really didn't sign up for. Like some asshole made me sign away my rights when I was born, and I'm the property of my country now. And I didn't ask for that, but okay, so enough of that. I'm going to go off on my own. I'm going to be a recluse, and I'm going to try to establish this new world. It seems like the crypto community is trying to build the new world that's counter to what the WEF is doing. So you're going to have the WF world, and then you're going to have the world of entrepreneurs and creators. Is it possible that this new world that's referred to in religious text and other things is really just as something as simple of, we're breaking away from this financial system, which people talk about the beast system. The system we've been in is a beast system. So I don't know how this new one's going to be worse, but maybe it will be. Is that possible? Like the new world is simply a split between two different financial systems and ways of living.
I mean, it's definitely possible, right? And if you want to think long and hard about how the world has come to the way it is today, we went from a barter system to eventually we're all using gold or other commodities to now we're in a fiat system, right? And there's so much to unpack there in and of itself. But now if you go into this crypto space, which is like credits or Bitcoin or whatever it ends up getting called, well, how do the people in charge maintain control? Well, they control the money supply, right? If you don't control the money supply, then you don't have much leg to stand on, right? Otherwise you have to control the military. And how do you control the military if you don't control the money? Well, you can't pay all the soldiers and buy all the tanks. So let's not fool ourselves. Every government in the world is trying to figure out how to maintain control of the money supply. The US most likely leading that charge with China right behind us. And as a result, they're going to come up with those decentralized coin structures, or the government coin CBDCs, right? Government coins. They're going to be controlled by governments and by Federal Reserves or by central banks. So we can't fool ourselves in thinking that they're completely separate, right? Because the central banks and the governments of the world, the big ones, have a very vested interest in figuring out the crypto stuff as well. And so everybody who says I'm going to be completely off grid and I'm going to have my own money, I'm going to be able to buy stuff, and what happens when they say, guess what, you can't do any transactions in anything other than this, which has happened in the past when we said, okay, you can only do transactions in gold, or you can only do transactions in greenbacks, or you can only do transactions around the world in US dollars, right? That's happened before. And so could it happen again? Absolutely, right? And I think another piece that's really, it's really scary for people to even think about. And again, it requires so much thought. Luckily, I don't like watching TV for the most part, so I get to read a lot of books and listen to podcasts and shows like yours, and get other people's perspectives. There's a book out there called The Fourth Turning, which would be really great for a lot of people
Yes.
to get into, right?
Highly recommend The Fourth Turning. Wow. So happy you brought this up.
Such an incredible topic. And then we talk about what's happening. Like there's another one by Peter Zayon, The End of the World is Just the Beginning. And he talks about the fact that we're at the pinnacle of population around the world right now. And the population is going to start decreasing rapidly because, let's face it, once you get to a certain level in a society, women don't want to have 5 babies anymore, right? You don't need an entire basketball team or a ranch to maintain. So it just doesn't happen. As a result, the population declines. And if, as the population is declining, you look at China with their one-child policy for so many years, all of a sudden the supply of workers declines, but the supply of elderly, the people that can't work, increases. And so now you start to have major mismatches of supply and demand and labor forces and all of this. And we're in such a globalized society that I have to wonder, and I don't know the answer to this, I have to wonder if all the stuff that's happening that we're seeing is because these really, really smart people with all the money in the world are seeing this happen, and they could see how potentially their infrastructure, their legacy, their government, their society could fall prey to a deglobalization because of all these major economic forces at play worldwide, and they're trying to figure out a way to stop that. I just have to wonder if that's something that's going on right now.
That's a really good thought. Yeah, I know one thing. I trust my eyes, but I don't trust my eyes.
Right. Yeah, it used to be
and I
we
know
just
that sounds like a
didn't trust what we heard.
contradiction, but what were you saying?
I was going to say, the saying used to be, don't trust anything you hear, only half of what you see, right? And now it's like, well, definitely don't trust anything you hear, and maybe only a little bit of what you see.
Yeah, it's in it. I mean, with AI imaging being so good and video, I mean, just what I'm seeing with what we're creating, it's like I'm excited about having a robot. Like I have a great working relationship with the different AIs that I use. They communicate well with me. They don't argue. They don't talk
Right.
They,
do what I want when I ask for it.
yeah, I think they're telling me the truth, or they lie to me in such a way that I don't care. I mean, and I'm excited about it. And then you were bringing up, I interviewed 2 weeks ago. I had a whole week of interviews with globalists, like people like WEF type people,
Mm-hmm.
and hearing people talk about population control. And when you hear them talk about the need for population control, it's not what the conspiracy theorists make it out to be, which again, they could just be rewording things to make it sound better. But they really make a strong case for why we need population control. In other words, they believe it with all their heart. Like believe I need oxygen and I need food and I really want an iced tea with honey as soon as this broadcast is over. And the way that I believe that, they believe that we need to reduce the population because of the resources, because of what we're doing to the environment. Now, is any of that true? I don't know. I suck at math and I'm not a weatherman. So I don't know how to read any of those things to know. But when you listen to their arguments, they're pretty convincing arguments. Not saying I want to wipe off the population, by the way.
Right. Well, that's the scary thing, right? Like if you go, tinfoil hat side of this, it's like we've implemented all these protocols and pandemics and things like that to reduce the population. And that's a really, really scary thought, right? You start thinking about that. And if somebody can manipulate the food supply, the water supply, put stuff into those things we're talking genocide. That's a really, really scary thought, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to believe that the sociopaths and psychopaths are not completely in control of the circus, and that's not going to happen. I'd like to believe that, right? I really do want to believe that. On the other hand, why would you talk about population control if you're talking about the existing population, like without And if people don't make that connection, like, okay, we need to reduce the population immediately. Well, how do you do that? Like, do we have a colony on Mars somewhere that we're just going to like ship people off to, stuff that I don't know about? Or are we talking like some really atrocious things? And I don't want to think about that. I really hope that's not what they're talking about. On the other hand, if you want to say we want to curb the growth of population in future generations, okay, I can understand that and I can get behind that, right? Because there are limited resources on this world. I mean, you go back and watch Total Recall and talk about, colonizing Mars just because we need the resources, right? Or going after the asteroids and things like that. But to talk about population control, and this might rub people the wrong way. It's almost like talking about gun controls, right? You can't just like get rid of something that people have come to live with, including their own lives, and just say, yeah, we're just gonna get rid of those. Like that's terrible.
Yeah.
And people shouldn't be talking like that. But if we're talking, hey, we do have resource constraints that are legitimate and real, and we need to be mindful of that, and we need to prepare for that. That's a little bit different conversation, in my opinion. I wouldn't use the word population control, but they definitely do.
Yeah, there is a different word for it that they're starting to use because population control has, again, a connotation to it, and people assume the meaning. And again, what else could it mean, right? So they've changed the word to almost make it sound like management. So like, what do you call those pre-planned communities? Like Irvine, California is full of them.
The smart cities.
Okay, but it would be like this suburban neighborhood where all the houses look the same, like a pre-planned community. Yeah, but right. Smart cities too, that one. But it's almost like that. I'm forgetting the name there. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I want to ask you before we wind down, because I've really enjoyed this conversation. I could just keep throwing stuff out there because you know about it. I want to ask, because you've been so, like, you're so accomplished, and like you got it going on. Like, I mean, you're doing some amazing stuff, but I don't think you can do all that amazing stuff for very long until you go on to something even more amazing. Because I mean, it seems like, and for just what I can see, is everything's getting a little bit better and is growing. So for you, if you've accomplished so much in your life, what's next? What are you doing?
I appreciate that, Joshua. So one of the things, like Angel Investors Network is my company, and we are working on a two-sided equation here, which is democratizing access to capital and democratizing access to angel investing, right? Going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, we do these events, and technology is making it easier for us to allow companies to get started, right? Yeah. Especially here in the US. And it's going to allow us more people to invest in these deals, potentially making them a lot more money. Right now, less than 1% of all people have ever done angel investing, right? Which means putting your money into a startup. A very, very, very small percentage of people actually own businesses, meaning passive investors in businesses, aside from putting their money in mutual funds and stocks and things like that. So for me, it's growing that brand, because that does allow more people to be more innovative, to get more access to resources, tools, technology, and capital. And that's a really great thing for me to be focusing on. But additionally, my wife and I joke about our little platform where we have conversations like this regularly, and it's very blunt and straight to the point, and offend people sometimes, and sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. But it's kind of helping to push this message of personal autonomy and freedom, right, and sovereignty. And I think that is something that it's just true to me. It's one of my core guiding principles in life, and helping other people understand that, I think, is going to be more of a lifelong passion than anything else. And I think that entrepreneurship is a really big part of that. And, of course, having financial freedom is also a big part of that. So constantly finding ways to mesh those three things together. And of course, traveling and seeing the world while I still can before it's all obliterated.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't happen. I want to see the world too. I have a big global vision, and for what I want to do in the world and who I want to do it for. And so I'm hoping that nukes are a psyop, and like, there's going to be peace, and like all this is just to freak everyone out. And it reminds me of the movie. Have you ever seen the movie The Game with Michael Douglas?
Oh yeah, a little bit older now, but yeah.
It's an older movie, but it's always stuck in my mind, like what I remember about it. And over the last 3 months, I just keep hearing the game, as if all that we're experiencing right now is our own version of that game. And that's the life that we're in. And like at the end of it, it's going to be like everyone was these special characters that played a role, just like that movie. And I keep like it's a reoccurring thought that just keeps popping in my head. And I just wonder, what are the possibilities? Like at the end of this, like surprise, now all your dreams are going to come true. So now you can travel and enjoy life. You're like, oh, so this is heaven. Okay, this is how that works. Okay, good. Like I'm hoping it's something like that, because the last thing I think of, like, I don't want to be enemies with anyone. I want to go to China. I want to go to Iraq. I want to go to Iran. I want to go to Pakistan. I want to go everywhere. Russia, Germany. Doesn't matter. I want to go experience all of it, and experience it in a way of, oh, that dude's an American, and then there'd be a connotation to it. Or I want people to get along. Like, oh, I'm tired of fighting over religion and over what left and right, and it's just like I'm ready to see the world come together. And it seems like that's how you are too, and I love that. So, my man, please take the last few minutes or however much time you want to take to share any last words that you have, anything on your heart, and please plug where people can find you, where they can support your podcast, your network, buy your books, sign up for your courses, get information about angel investing. The floor is yours, sir.
Awesome, Joshua. Yeah, I'm with you, man. And the thing is, we tend to forget that people are still people, right? And most people feel the same way. And so wherever you travel in the world, most people are still very open and accepting. Granted, if they find out you're an American, they might roll their eyes a little bit and give you that. But I've had that happen several times. Hopefully, most people are not total pig-headed about everything. But I'm really looking forward to, hopefully putting all this stuff behind us. So we can actually move on and live our lives the way we want to, and just enjoying ourselves. As for me, people can find me at angelinvestorsnetwork.com. That's where our business is. We have free tools on there where people can, if they're looking to raise capital or start a business, there's quizzes and resources there that are available. And then same thing with investors. And then we do our events, building wealth with businesses. And you can find that stuff out on our website as well. So that's probably the best place to go. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. Pretty active on LinkedIn for the most part, as long as I don't forget to post stuff. And I'm happy to connect with people there as well.
Awesome, man. Jeff, God bless you, brother. Thank you for all that you do. I really enjoyed this. I'm really not a big fan of having like marketing business conversations at all. I never know really what I'm going to talk about or how much like enthusiasm I can have about it. But I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think you're awesome, and I'm rooting for you all the way, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Joshua. I really appreciate you having me here. It's been an honor.
See you soon, man.